Hey guys, this is a video on solving absolute value equations. It's an add-on to the equations review packet. We reviewed this back when you guys were freshmen, but it's been a while, and it's a slight difference in steps in solving a regular equation. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to simplify absolute value expressions. That's just with numbers or anything. And then be able to solve the equations that have absolute value in there. So the first step is that simplifying piece, and this just means like take this x, the 6, and plug it in right there. Now absolute value x as parentheses, so we have to do everything inside the parentheses first. Okay, so here, I'm going to multiply those. That's going to be negative 12. And this is negative 4, and they're minus. Absolute value, you might remember, is the distance away from 0, or it just makes everything positive. But remember that distance fact, because that's going to come back with the equations. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. We keep the minus, because it's still minus, and the absolute value of negative 12 is 12. So the answer is negative 8. Okay. Now it's the same process here. Okay. Absolute value of 2 times negative 4 minus 3 times 3. So I have to do everything inside this first. Subtract. And then take the absolute value, which is 17. So with numbers, all you do is treat it as a parentheses and then make it positive after. The problem comes when we have an equation. Now, absolute value, let's say there's an absolute value of x, okay? And that's 2. Well, really, I could plug the absolute value 2 in there. That's 2. Or negative 2. That's also 2. Because either way, x could be one of these values. So what happens is, x could be 2 or negative 2, depending on if it comes out to be the positive case or the negative case. So for equations like this, we have to consider both of those solutions. So 2x minus 3 could be equal to 17, right? Or 2x minus 3 could be equal to negative 17. So the trick is this 17, it breaks off into 2 different cases. And now I solve each one separately. So add 3. 2x equals 20, 2x equals negative 14, x equals 10, or x equals negative 7. So there's 2 different numbers. And the trick is to split it at the top before you start solving. So another example of that are simple ones like this. So absolute value of x plus 15 equals 37. I split it into its 2 cases. X plus 15 equals 37, or x plus 15 equals negative 37. I never change anything inside the parentheses, or the absolute value. I only change the number out here. Subtract 15. X equals 22, or x equals negative 52. Now the trick with 5 is the absolute value, like this one, isn't alone. So the trick is I have to move this 16 over to the other side. And I'm going to do that by subtracting that 16. And that's negative 14. Now, you might say, okay, well, split it into those two cases, where 5b plus 9 equals negative 14, or 5b plus 9 equals positive 14. And that's where most people get the mistake. But what you have to remember, anytime you have the absolute value, this is always a positive number. So no matter what number I plug in here, every time I take the absolute value, that's going to be positive. Well, if you look, okay, well, if I take the absolute value of whatever this is that ever going to be negative 14? No, because it's always a positive number. So this is where we get no solution. Okay? Now I'll give you an example of that. If I plug in b equals 1, okay? b equals 1. So the absolute value of 5 times 1 plus 9. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 9 is 14. The absolute value of 14, 14. Okay? So that is always positive. Let's take another case. Let's take negative 3. Well, 5 times negative 3 is negative 15 plus 9, which is negative 6. And then I take the absolute value, that's 6. No matter what, this last result is always going to be positive. I'm never going to get a negative solution. So I can stop right there if I notice that the absolute value is alone and it equals a negative number. It's a no solution. So now you can finish off that review of equations packet and then take the learning goal quiz. Be sure to check your answers with me before you move on.